when I first started running, I was trying to run away from the fact that I don't really think I enjoyed my life. I knew I wanted to be something more. The body is meant to adapt. If you are starting running and you're out, this hurts, taking it step by step and day by day, I'm healthy because now I know the correct way to do it.
Tapping into the best version of yourself looks different for everybody, and this particular individual does it in a very unique way. Hundreds and hundreds of miles later, and hundreds more ahead of him. This is the type of guy who has built resilience through the military, through practicing what he preaches, and inspiring individuals to make the most of themselves. I'm so hyped to welcome to today's podcast Mr. Matthew Johnson. How are you today, sir?
I'm good, brother. I appreciate you having me. I'm glad that we could finally find a time to connect, and we're doing the best with what we got, but we're here.
Let's start with that. We were talking a bit before about what you're running tomorrow, but it's not just tomorrow. You have this crazy run coming up, having just finished another crazy run. You just did a 30-miler locally in New Jersey, my home state. Congrats on that. Now you have this incredible run where you're planning to run across the entire state of Texas. Now, people probably need a few seconds just to wrap their head around the gravity of that particular feat. But what inspired it, and what do you hope to accomplish by running all those miles?
It was a little selfish, because I actually still remember exactly where I was when I just came up with the idea. I don't remember what sparked it, but something sparked I want to run across the state of Texas. I was sitting outside the gym in the parking lot, and I texted one of my best friends, Drew Darby, who films for Sally McRae, Heather Jackson, these top tier ultra runners. And he knows very much about the sport. And I texted him hey, I want to run across the state of Texas. That would be so sick. And he's it's already been done. And I'm oh my gosh. I'm really? I found out who had done it. His name's Ken. He lives in Austin, or he lives in San Antonio. And I reached out to him. I'm hey man, you don't know me, but I would like to, also run across Texas. And he's dude, let's hop on a Zoom call. My team, I'll get my whole team on the call. Which is honestly very abnormal for someone who I'm pretty sure he holds the record for the fastest time across Texas. He was instantly willing to give me anything I needed to see if it was possible. And we hopped on a call in, I want to say it was probably December. Pretty much he was you can do it. And they were telling me how they did it and what they used. And then for me, once I kind of, knew that selfishly I wanted to do it for me, that was when I was okay, how can I make this into something bigger? And that was the idea of running for Valor Fit. And Valor Fit is a 501c nonprofit based out of Des Moines, Iowa, where I was from and worked at Camp Dodge Station there. I was active duty within the National Guard. And Valor Fit's number one goal is to put veterans into the fitness space. So for me, it was this full circle alignment where I definitely believe that it was, it's definitely a God thing, right? How, I can take my passion of fitness and also my passion to help veterans and bring it all in together.
I mean, it's a commendable mission. You are quite literally putting your mind, body, and soul on the line. How long do you think it's going to take you? And for the audience, how many miles is it?
So it is from, we're going west to east, El Paso on the Mexican border to San Benito Pass, which is on the Louisiana border. So the border of Mexico to the border of Louisiana. And it's 850 miles, 1,300 kilometers. I don't think I've put this goal out there a lot just because I don't want it to be about the goal. I want it to be about the veterans. But my personal goal is 17 days and 17 to 21. So 17 days is 50 miles a day. 21 days is 40 miles a day. But for the runner that's listening to this, if you really break it down, right, you can break down, big miles a lot easier. If you break down 50 miles a day, And my number one goal is I want to go 12 hours on, 12 hours off, because I want to focus on recovery just as much as I'm focusing on the miles. So 12 hours on and doing 50 miles in 12 hours is a 14-minute pace, which seems, I think that seems very, very doable. The biggest thing that I've told people is it's not about how do I train for the miles. It's how do I best train to recover in those 12 hours that I have on. So it's been for me, working with companies that I've tested and trialed their products. I'm finding a lot of recovery benefits in colostrum. I've been using colostrum. I've been using recovery products from VPN, tart cherry juice, MitoPure, which is a cellular recovery product. A personal vitamin stack from Blokes where I get my blood drawn and anything that they think I might be a little deficient in, they give me a personalized supplement to help with that. So I've been doing so much work on the recovery to try to get that dialed in. And, leading into, like you said, the 30 miler, I was very happy with the fact of, I ran that 30 with the American flag. Next day I went out and ran an hour 20 10 miler and felt phenomenal. So the recovery is there and my base is there. It's just right now kind of, I feel like just carrying, we're doing we're doing a lot of 100-mile weeks, but, it's carrying the recovery in the process. So, and running a couple times a day to, run on fatigued legs. And, right now, my only job outside of being an athlete is being a coach. And so that gives me a lot of time to, honestly, like I'm running in the morning, I'm coming home, I'm lifting, I'm taking a nap, I'm working, I'm, doing my recovery process, my reds and my greens and my colostrum and all of this stuff. And then, taking a rest time before I go and I run again. So really trying to find the rest and, really focus on that.
I have so many questions, like from an athlete perspective. Maybe we can connect offline and talk about it. But I think, something that would really help, because it's not just like about the performance. I think the performance level is so impressive. I'm running 58 miles on September 7th. So I'm planning on doing that straight. And when I say that to the average person, they're like, oh my God, that's unhealthy. Like, why you won't be able to walk, your knees, you probably get it at least 10 times more than me. And I'm training for this one run. And so I recently did my first 30 miler on a whim. I was planning on going for like an hour or two, and I was like, I'm just going to keep going. And once you're at that marathon marker, or like 21 miles in, okay, I'm running a marathon, and run a marathon, may as well, it's just one of those situations. So I remember feeling this incredible sense of like serenity after the fact. There's just like, I haven't been that calm. And I did the Goggins challenge too. I've done a couple other things I'll tell you about. Like that sense of serenity that comes from running that many miles, that sense of accomplishment. And now gearing up to this big run, 50 miles a day, man, like that's insane. I know you're talking about recovery, but like, can you just kind of put into perspective ultra running as a whole for people, so maybe it's not as foreign of a concept as people think it is?
It's hard for me, to think that 50 miles is a lot right now, which is hard for me. Like I say that out loud, I say that out loud and I laugh inside, because I think what a lot of people don't understand truly is that I didn't start running until like my first marathon was in 2022.
Wow.
And, so I think, when it comes down to these big feats, just like I said, it's almost like, how can you break it down? Just like what you said, right? Like once you kind of get to that marathon point, it's like, okay, what else can I do? But for me, it's like, okay, and I know how cliche this sounds, but it's like 50 miles is 10 miles 5 times. And, once I do 10, then I know that, okay, I'm almost to, I just need to do 10 more and I'm at 20. Once I get to 20, then I'll hit 25 and I'll be halfway. And once I hit 30, I only have 20 left. I've ran 2 miles hundreds of times. Once I hit 40, all I have is 10 miles left and then I'm done. It's breaking that down. And where I really, try to tell people is, like when you first start riding a bike, when you were a young child, you start off with your training wheels, right? And, you know, and then your parents or your guardian, you know, they take off one of the training wheels, and, you know, then you ride with one and you kind of figure that out. Then you ride with no training wheels and you finally learn how to ride the bike. And then you're going to go on like a mile bike ride. And then you're going to ride a bike ride, you know, then you're going to go on a bike ride for 5 miles, and then, you know, 10 miles. And then as we become an adult, if we're going to go on a bike and we're going to, you know, we'll bike 20 miles for a recovery run, right? But years ago, we thought that riding right down the sidewalk in front of the house was the longest ride in the world. In relativity, it's, you know, once you build up, it becomes so easy. And that's why, like, with a lot of my athletes, like, I coach a lot of athletes that have the goal of, you know, they're coming to me saying, hey, like, I had a bodybuilder that came to me and he's like, hey, like, I'm going from the couch to, I want to run a half marathon. He's a 260-pound bodybuilder. And he's like, I want to run a half marathon. And he's like, and I do it in 6 months. And I'm like, brother, I can, yeah, I was like, I can get you healthy to run a half marathon in 60 days. And his very first run was a 10-minute run walk. And then within 60 days, he ran a 10:30 pace for a half marathon at 260 pounds.
Pretty good.
It's just like that. Like, it's just slowly and gradually just increasing the miles and learning how to recover, learning how to not overdo it, you know, cutting out all the bullshit, like, you know, the crappy foods, kind of cutting out the crappy foods. I also like calories, you know, cutting out the alcohol, trying to push more water, you know, doing what I can so my body feels good, while at the same time going to bed at 9 o'clock. I'm getting ready to go to sleep at 10 o'clock. Like, I'm in bed, getting ready to fall asleep. And then I'm waking up every day at like 6:15 on the dot. So like I'm getting an adequate amount of sleep. And, you know, just focusing on that, I think is, you know, the biggest thing is just, yes, you're doing this hard thing with your body, but you also at the same time need to meet your recovery with the same intensity that you're meeting your miles.
I love how you said that 50 miles isn't a big deal to you, because I remember, at least like at this stage, right? And like you said, you're laughing inside. It is a big deal. You know it's a big deal. I know it's a big deal. But for the purposes of what you're doing, you can't see it as a big deal because you're going to do it like every day for 3 weeks to a month, depending on you know, how that works out for you. And I think that's also super important because even this week, I did like a 10-miler on Monday and like, I don't know, a 5K yesterday. I've done already like 30 miles this week, whatever. Tomorrow I have like this 20, maybe 30, who knows when I end. Depends how early I wake up and when my wife needs me with the baby. But like, as a side point, the 3-miler or the 5K felt like longer than the 10-miler. And I'm sure you've had moments like that where it's like, oh my God, the shorter run needs to end compared to like this longer run, you know? But like, it's crazy how when you can set that mental, I guess, or like your mindset is like, oh, I'm going to go out to run 10 today versus, oh, I'm going to go out to run 3 today. Like the level set. Some people I think have tried to say like, oh, if you don't want to, or if you're only going to run 3 miles, tell yourself you're going to run 5. So this way, like the 3 miles won't feel as long, stuff like that. But you're in this space for about, I don't know, almost 2 years at this point, right? Your first marathon was in 2022. Do you think that you're running towards something or away from something? What's driving you to run all these miles?
When I first started running, I was trying to run away from the fact that like I don't really think I enjoyed my life. I read David Goggins' book, Can't Hurt Me. And I was in the military at the time. I was active duty. And I remember, you know, reading his book, I'm like, this guy had a terrible life. And we had a lot of similarities, him and I, growing up. I was like, if this guy had such a terrible life, why do I feel sorry for myself? Like, look at what he has done. And it kind of said, you know, to me, like, it kind of put that, like, prove it mentality inside of me to where, like, why do I feel sorry for myself? And I don't like my life right now because I wasn't enjoying the military at the time. I had been in for 8 years. Like, I just didn't know who I wanted to be. I knew I wanted to be something more. And the running for me was an escape from that mentality of like, I don't like my life right now. As that has grown, I feel like a lot of people and a lot of influencers push like, oh, I go run because it's hard, and I go run because I don't like it, and you need to do hard things and do things that you don't like. Absolutely not. I do not believe that whatsoever. I run because I love it. I now run because it is something that is so freeing to me. It is just like, we wake up and we brush our teeth, right? If we wake up and we don't brush our teeth, we're probably going to have a shitty day. If I wake up and I don't get my run in, I don't get that freedom of like, I feel so free the rest of the day. So where I'm going with that is I started running because I was running away from something. And now I run because I love the life that I live, but running is an additive to that. Running is my true love. And learning, just like a relationship, right? What are the things I need to do to feel good? What are the things that I do that make me feel bad? If you're not enjoying running, you need to really like take a step back and look outside the box, and why are you not enjoying it, and what can you change to enjoy it? Because you should enjoy it. You shouldn't go out and just run because it sucks. Running should be something we are humans. We are made to run. I mean, even the story of how the marathon came about, right? Like we have these legs, like we are made to move. You think about, we've had war for thousands of years where, you look back in the old times and where, these soldiers are moving their bodies hundreds and hundreds of miles to, we're made to move. And I feel like once that you find that and you're able to find the happiness in that, everything changes.
I love that. But I want to go back to what I was asking you before also about when you kind of get that feedback that it's unhealthy because it's so foreign to people. Like for me, I have crazy relativity about what I do because my inputs are people like yourself, right? David Goggins, also massive influence. You heard of Ross Edgley as well?
I haven't.
Bro, this guy is like swam around Great Britain in 167 days, like towed a mini truck for a marathon, like scaled the rope as many times as it took till he reached the height of Mount Everest. He's like doing these crazy like swimming in a lake for like over 24 hours or something, like just like not even getting on a boat, like straight up staying in the water and like seeing what happens to his skin, like the crazy stuff. So he's written like 3 books, and they were like incredible, The Art of Resilience and The World's Fittest Book, like all these books. I think I even have a couple behind me, and stuff like that. My inputs have always put things in perspective. And so some of the things that I've done, did like 1,000 push-ups in an hour. That's all how it kind of started. Then I did the Goggins challenge, and then I added 2 miles at the end. And that was, David Goggins introduced, his content and his books introduced me to ultra running. Then last year I did 1,018 pull-ups in 4 hours. And all of these had like philanthropic endeavors tethered to them, raised over like $30,000 collectively between those 3 different events. I have this next one coming up again. All of these different things that come together, like I said, I have inputs, right? Truett Haynes just did over 8,000 pull-ups, like people like you running across the state of Texas. For some people that don't have this relativity, right? Like you talked about breaking it down. When it comes to like what's healthy, what's unhealthy, how do you rationalize, how do you approach that element of your life?
Like, how do I decide when enough is enough type of thing?
How are you dealing with any of the negative feedback when it comes to, oh, you're just tormenting your body or sabotaging your body, like what you're doing isn't healthy, like this isn't right?
To me, the biggest thing is that the body is meant to adapt, and the body will adapt to the situation that it's in. That's why you see, like, think about, the hardest geezer, right? Who just ran across Africa for over a year. Showing that this is possible within the human body is, people need to understand when you first start running, if you haven't been doing it, it's going to feel bad. And at that point, it's, you have to be able to have the, not put so much pressure on yourself that like, oh, this should be great right now. just like with anything, right? Like if you want to become an artist, your very first drawing is going to suck. If you want to become, a race car driver, you're going to go get in the race car and your first race is going to suck. And, so the biggest thing is I think is just taking it step by step and day by day. And, if you are starting running and you're like, out, this hurts, you shouldn't be hurting yourself. That took me a long time to come to terms with, but like, you shouldn't be out breaking yourself off and hurting yourself, because you have such capability of slowly building up. I think that people just get so rushed that they see they see somebody like Goggins, or they see somebody, like Truett Haynes. Like Truett Haynes didn't just get on a pull-up bar and do 8,000 pull-ups. This was months and years of building. I didn't just decide I was going to run across the state of Texas. This was 2 years coming. And, so it's not rushing this.
A lot, by the way, just so you know, it's very impressive.
We like to rush everything, right? Like we want instant gratification. People like myself, or people like these other guys that are doing these hard endeavors, they're able to put the instant gratification behind them and truly understand like that you don't need to be gratified immediately in that moment. So, that's what I think is being able to take that instant gratification and putting that behind them in order to accomplish the biggest, the main goal later on down the road.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Inside the Inspired. My name is Jonathan Cohen, and I have a quick favor to ask you. If you're getting any value out of this content, please take a second to subscribe to the channel. You help us reach more people, and you can also stay up to date with all the latest content coming your way. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll catch you in the episode.
So as you kind of look to this next phase, right? Like, you have this awesome run that you're planning. I'm psyched to follow it. Like, to donate to the cause. We're going to add the link in the show notes so people can stay up to date with everything that you're doing. I love how you talked about the adaptability aspect, because like, even when I did that 30-mile run, I like had a full day after that. I went to UFC, went to the city, and the next day I didn't run, but I still lifted and I felt good. To speak to someone who's doing this incredible feat, I mean, you also have a few ultra marathons under your belt as well. Can we kind of go through the resume real quick? How many ultras, how many marathons in the last 2 years?
So first I want to say, the very first time I ever ran 30 miles was in 2021. Okay. So I said that I ran my first marathon. That was my first race, but I did do a 30 in 2021, in the fall of 2021. My first marathon was in January of 2022. But going back to that, my very first 30 miler, I got back home, I couldn't even walk up the stairs. Adaptability, right? I did the 30 miler last weekend and I ran 10 miles the next day, felt absolutely phenomenal, went and lifted, deadlifted, all of that, right? So the body over time. But the resume, yeah. So 2021, I got stationed out in Virginia. And when I was out in Virginia, we were very rural. Like, there wasn't a lot going on. I was a recruiter at the time for the Guard, and we lived right on the Appalachian Trail. So we were there mountain running, and I just ran and ran and ran and ran. So leading into 2022, I did my first marathon, the BPN marathon. No training, like no coach, no nothing like that. I went 2:59:52. After that, I talked to Natasha Vandermeer, who was Nick Bare's Ironman coach. She told me that I should do an Ironman. So I signed up with her as a coach. During my Ironman prep leading up to Ironman in June, I went down to Arkansas and I ran my first 50K and I won it in the middle of Ironman prep, which was like, that was kind of the moment where I'm like, I have something here, right? Like I'm good at this, because I found it so late in life. And, I was 26 and, so I was like, I have something here. Leading into Ironman Des Moines in June, I went 9th overall in my age group. That was my first Ironman. I didn't even know how to swim in March. And then come June, I went 9th overall. And then I did my very first 4th of July American flag charity run. I ran 40 miles from the capital in Des Moines to Southern Iowa. And in that time, the Leadville Racing Foundation saw that on Instagram. And Leadville reached out to me and said, hey, we had a runner drop out for a charity entry. Are you interested? And I'm like, yeah, like I'm like, absolutely. Like I want, like, yeah, I'll race Leadville. I'm like, when is it? And they're like, oh, it's in 29 days. So I go out to Leadville in August and I run 56 miles. And because it was an out and back. So I went out to 50, came back over Hope's Pass, came back in, sat down, and I couldn't stand up. My little brother had to like put his hands under my arms, pick me up, and like push on my knees to like lock my knees so I could stand. I was brutally destroyed. And I walked the next 50 kilometers and made it to the very last checkpoint. I had to be there by 7 o'clock on the dot. I rolled in, and this is on Strava as well. I rolled in and I was under 5 minutes. I rolled in a little bit before 7:05. And they cut me off by time. So I DNF'd on a time cutoff. So then that really that lit a fire under me where I was like, I DNF'd my very first 100. And I'm like I can't let it go like this. So I immediately signed back up for Leadville. 2023 is when everything really started coming together. After 2022, like I spent all winter training and being coached. 2023, I then went back to the BPN Marathon and I won it.
I just want to level set real quick. Less than a year after you start running, you've run a sub 3, a 40 miler.
Won the 50K.
You won a 50K.
And then
voluntarily called out to do Leadville. Run how many miles into Leadville? Over 60?
I did 87. The last cutoff.
Out of 100 miles. This is all within a year and change of running, or within a year?
Yeah.
Keep going, please.
So leading into 2023, I went back to the BPN Marathon and I won it. I ran a 2:54. 6 days later, I went to Ironman Texas and I PR'd the Ironman. I didn't place very well, but I ran my fastest Ironman time. I did a 10:40 Ironman. And that was within the same week. That was my hard thing for the year, was I wanted to do the BPN Marathon and the Ironman Texas. So I raced the BPN Marathon on Sunday, and then I took Monday, Tuesday off. I left for Houston on Wednesday, and I raced Ironman Texas on Saturday. This is where it all started on like me becoming this elite athlete, because during Ironman Texas, at mile 24 in stride, I didn't know at the time, but in stride, I broke my fibula. And completely, come to find out 8 months later, I completely fractured the fibula clean through. And I have a high pain tolerance. I am an idiot. I'm ignorant. I don't know what it was. I was like, ouch, that hurt. And, I limped my way through, and I was on crutches for about 3 months. And then I never went to the doctor and went about my way. So with that injury, I had to take all of April, all of May off. I was already signed up for Leadville. So I started training again for Leadville in June, July. I raced Leadville in August, went 28 hours at Leadville, and then went back to do another 100 in September. And I was having issues with that left leg. And at the time, I thought they were just shin splints. I towed the line to the LA 100. I led the entire thing up to mile 73, where the pain was so bad I pulled myself out of the race. I quit. I could barely even stand, let alone move. That was on a Saturday. Flew back to Austin on Monday and knew that the pain was so bad that I needed to go to the hospital. Went to the hospital, went through x-rays and an MRI, and come to find out, the doctor came in the room, and the first thing she said is, when was this race? And I said, it was Saturday. And she goes, okay. She's like, you have 3 leg fractures that have been there for a very long time. And at that moment, like she was telling me like I towed the line to this 100-miler with 3 fractures in my leg. That is one of the moments that I'm most thankful for in my entire life, because that moment right there changed everything. Because I knew at that moment that exactly what I just said, right? You don't need to break yourself off to be a runner, or you don't need to break yourself off to be this hard body, to be this, ultra marathoner. And that forced me I had to take September, October, November, and December off. I had to take 4 months off of running. And at that time, all I knew in my life was running. And I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what my point of life was anymore. That was leading into January, where I came up with the idea. Literally, I was on the call with Ken that I just spoke about earlier with a broken leg, knowing that I wanted to run across Texas. And because the original goal was Texas in April. But I knew that, like, I had multiple phone calls with friends who were all like, why push for April when you know you're not 100%? And that was the aha moment in my head where I said, if I want to be an elite athlete, I need to stop destroying my body. And in that moment, everything changed. And that is something I'm so thankful for, because that led me into a 4-month recovery. That then led me into winning my very first 100-miler in March. I ran a 19-hour 100, completely healthy. And then, led me into, that was March, led me into a overnight 50 that I ran in 8.5 hours, leading me into another overnight 50 where I PR'd the 50 overnight on trail. During a 100-mile week, I ran a 7.5 hour 50-miler. And now leading me into the run across Texas, where I was now able, because of that happening, I was now able to clear my entire schedule. I was supposed to go back again to Leadville this year because I wanted to get the big belt buckle. I wanted to go under 25. I deferred Leadville to 2025, and I was comfortable doing that, which is huge for me to be able to say, I don't need to do this because I have there's a bigger plan. Everything in 2022, overtraining, missing Leadville, leading into 2023, to overdoing it once again in the spring, to breaking the leg, to finding the fracture in the fall, all led me into where I am today and has molded me into this athlete that can now run 100 miles a week for weeks on end. And I'm healthy because now I know the correct way to do it.
That is absolutely wild, man. That is an incredible resume of excellence to acquire in such a short time frame. Like, you're built for it, and the results show, and the mindset shifts that you've acquired along the way, like, I know so many people are going to benefit from. And so I'm kind of like still in the former version of where you were, in that I don't believe in sabotaging my body. I'll do saunas, I'll go for walks. I don't take rest days, really. I can't remember the last one I took, but that's to say, like, it's all relative, right? Like, you're out here doing 100-mile weeks, like it's no big deal, and you're about to run across an entire state. And I'll tell you this, I looked at the state of New Jersey running across it because of you. One day I'll do it. It's not nearly as big. It's like 100-something miles, I think. So you can do it in a couple days. You could probably do it in a day and a half, knowing you. But the question that I want to ask you is about the relationship between pain and the mind and performance. What is it about you, right? Like, you love it, right? But you're able to push through that pain. If you're even feeling pain at this point, right? Like you said, you had 3 fractures in your leg, you didn't even know they were there. What is it about the pain and the ability to tolerate pain and the ability to persist through the pain that allows you to keep your performance at such a high level? And what's it carry over to the rest of your life?
I grew up with a single mom. We grew up very, very poor. And my mom at times would work, 2, 3, 4 jobs in order to just put food on the table back in, 2000. And then, growing up into my high school years, I watched my mom struggle with addiction. We lived in a double wide trailer when I was in, high school, and we were still kind of poor. And I watched her go through an abusive, physically and mentally abusive marriage. And, where I was, physically and mentally abused as well. And, there was times where my little brother and I were locked in bedrooms while my mom was at work. That's real life pain, right? Like that's real life. And unfortunately, when you're that young, you're not able to have control over that. So for me, when I go out and I do these events and I get into that dark place where I have pain and where I'm feeling pain and feeling sorry for myself, I remind myself that like I am now in control of this pain. And I decide what I get to do with it. I decide what it gets to do with me. And no pain that I will ever go through in a ultra event will ever touch the pain that I had to watch my mom go through for almost 10 years. That pain will never touch the pain where I had to tell my little brother when we were locked in a bedroom that it was going to be okay and we would get out at some point. I'm not asking anyone to feel sorry for me. Like I'm not, but sharing that story and sharing those stories is, there are plenty of people out there that have been through worse shit than that. There are plenty of people out there that have been through the same exact thing. And, this is what you do with that pain that you went through is who you're going to become. And, people will go through that pain and they will then, get to their adult life and they'll seek out that same pain. They'll get addicted to substances. They'll get in abusive relationships. For me, I chased that pain through the ultra sport because I already know what it was like to experience that in real life. So I'm able to easily get through it out there by reminding myself that it's nowhere even close to the real life shit that I've been through. It's the same reason why you see a lot of these ultra runners that are military guys, and they thrive in it because they've been in these deployments. They've been in these bad situations. They've seen the real life shit that sucks, and they don't have control over that at the time. And then they go and they chase these ultra events and they have control over what they do in that moment and how they react to that pain. And they're able to understand that physical pain will never touch the amount of pain that that you've seen in the past. It's using that in that time, but also, to keep telling that story. Like when I first, started doing, podcasts here and there and posting on Instagram, like I didn't want to tell anyone that story. I didn't want to, I didn't want people to know that. But I think for me, like the same reason why reading Goggins' book, like why I became who I became is because I always said, wow, that guy's been through that shit. Like what can I do? So for me, like telling that story and telling people that, find out a way to use something as an outlet to, take your situation that will always affect you for the rest of your life and find a healthy outlet for it to where every single day you can do something and constantly chip away at destroying that. And then that's where I started running because I was running from something. And that has now turned into I'm running for something. I'm running to slowly chip away at that emotional and mental pain that I grew up knowing. And I'm also running at the same time to show people what they can get away from.
One of my favorite sayings is, I think it was Michelangelo who said, I saw an angel in the marble, so I carved it out. And the way that you just talked about it, the identity shift, the transformation that you've been through to get to this stage. An elite athlete, it feels like an understatement, like out here winning races this early into your running career. I'm a former criminal prosecutor, and I specialized in domestic violence. So that hits home in the Bronx, actually. So it hit home on a few different levels when you're talking about that, because there's a level of trauma and a level of relativity that comes from going through experiences like that. And obviously it's also forged your character to help you now inspire so many people. And they say that certain things happen to certain people because they can handle it. And what you've done with that pain, how you've leveraged it to inspire people like me, man, to go and seek out this higher version of themselves actionably and effectively and impactfully, so that I can now go out into the world and create positive ripples. The audience in the podcast can go out and create positive ripples. That's what it comes down to at the end of the day, being able to pay it forward, man. And I love to see everything you're up to. We didn't even talk about you being a creator. I guess you're going to have to come back on so we can have that whole conversation. But this has been fantastic. I know everyone's going to want to keep up with the journey. Please let them know where they can find you.
Obviously, Instagram, at Matt Johnson with 2 underscores. And then just this year, we just launched YouTube. So we have all of our long form on YouTube leading up to the run across Texas, starting with the Texas announcement, into a day in the life, into a sweat test, overnight 50, the American flag run. Everything that I've done in 2024 leading into the run across Texas is on YouTube as well. So if you want a quick glimpse at me, you can find me on Instagram. If you want a deep dive into what I do in life, you can find me on YouTube.
Awesome. And then there's one more question that I ask all my guests that I'm not going to pose to you. If the future version of yourself from 10 years from now were to fly in and offer you some advice in order to get there, what do you think he would say to you?
Do not rush. Because I feel like that's what I would say then, because this is what I would, if I could go back to myself at 18, 19, actually 19, if I go back to myself at 19, it just came on my memories. I joined the military 10 years ago. If I could go back to that kid 10 years ago and look at him, and I could say, you don't need to do anything different because it's all going to pan out, but don't rush the process. Don't get so caught up that you need to do too much, because I've seen in 10 years, everything will work itself out. But enjoy the moment now. Enjoy all the mess ups. Enjoy the messiness. Enjoy the good, enjoy the bad, enjoy it all. And every single moment that you live, take a step back and ask yourself, am I living in one of those moments where I'm going to look at it later and be like, oh, like that was a good day. And I feel like we always miss the good days because we never see them as a good day until it's a month later and we look back. Because I just did that with one of my best friends, Brett, who ran that 30 mile with the American flag. And he texts me and he's like, that YouTube video is so good. He's like, I wish we could live that day again. And that in that moment, I was like, I never took a step back in that moment because I was running to just think about exactly what we were doing, and we were doing it together. And how cool it was that we were all there with Amanda, my girlfriend, and the entire crew and the team and the friends, and I'll never have that moment back. So my advice would be to not rush, enjoy every moment, good and bad, and always take a step back and reflect.
I love it, man. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. This was awesome.
Absolutely. I appreciate you having me.